We up? What's up, party animals? Sorry, my computer got me started a little later than it implied. How's everybody doing? I look like crap today, mostly because I haven't taken a shower yet because nothing in the world makes sense anymore. Uh, Today is the earliest I've woken up in like a month, and I woke up at like 11:30 this morning. That's where it's at now, and I just started kind of just reflecting on some funny things, and I figured today's more of a day of rest and chill. And of course, got my trusty um, old school GameCube out. I'm still waiting. I have well, I have a gaming console that should be here in the next couple of days. It's the one splurge that I've made with my little bit of extra money that's come in during this time of quarantine. The only benefit of quarantine is that I'm making more money through unemployment than I am at my regular job, which of course is a great sign of how screwed up our, wage system is. And I just got my stimulus check a couple of days ago, and I got um, my taxes back just a couple of weeks ago too. So literally, making more money than usual on top of the like cash I just brought in from my taxes and my stimmy. But, since I'm not really doing a lot, just hanging out, chilling, being rather unproductive, I'm sure at some point I'll find something to do. I was just I was just kind of sitting here and I was starting to think a little bit about kind of the behind the scenes stuff that's happened in like films I've done because I've been doing films, making, my own films and stuff since 2012, summer of 2012. And, you know, you get to see the final cut and stuff like that, but you don't actually see what goes on behind the scenes. And what really first got me starting to think about this a little bit was I was remembering um, there was a brief period like 2011, mostly 2011, a little bit of 2012 maybe, but mostly 2011. I was trying to do these little these side film projects, trying to get back into film. I just started going back to school with an objective to go into the multimedia program with a focus in film production. But it wouldn't be till like pretty much my first year back at school. I was mostly just covering core classes. I took like one or two things, but I wasn't really taking any film production stuff yet. But I, made movies with friends. I was kind of getting a better vibe for like how to do good cinematography as opposed to just garbage. And so I was kind of churning out these little side videos. I did a video talking a little bit about this, a little bit about kind of the movies I did that I just kind of threw up on YouTube before I actually got like good film equipment. And during this time, I mean, a lot of my early time filmmaking. By the way, I don't know when someone might come downstairs. Um, I hate doing this stuff when some people will sometimes, to do laundry, whatever. So I may pause briefly. I don't want to be like middle of the story and have somebody come downstairs and like make the whole situation uncomfortable for me. I'm sorry, I'm one of those types of people. I know it's probably obnoxious to y'all extroverts, but just letting you know in case I just kind of go quiet for a second. Um, but the I used to live at the rectory property at my church. I lived there for about three times longer than I was planning on. And I lived there until the start of 2017, when thank God I finally got out of there because it was getting weird. But a lot of these side projects I did, if I needed an interior location, I just used the house that I lived in because I was living with the bishop and his wife, and later bishop and his next wife. Um, and they would, work from like they leave for work at like 8, come home at like 3:30, 4 o'clock. So pretty much morning, early afternoon, there was nobody home except me. Those are the good times. And so, like, if I wanted to do a little short project, or even if it was a project that took a couple of days, we'd film from like, 9 till 2, and then I'd be like, okay, well, the people are in, like, I think only one time did they ever come home before I got something done. So we always, because, you know, the objective was, or the idea was they would get home around 3:30, between 3 and 4. But sometimes they come home at like 2, and I'd be like, oh crap, well, okay, this just got very awkward. Um, and so, I would do these little short side projects, and then by summer 2012, I was actually doing more in-depth stuff and kind of going out and shooting at other locations. And I used the first two first like films I did, which were projects for school. I also filmed at the house that I was living in, and just had those be like the homes that my lead characters lived in. The second film I did, we only see the home at the start of the film, so it wasn't that big of a deal. But I got to a point where I was like, I don't want every film I do to have the same interior look for the lead character. So after those first couple of films, that more or less went by the wayside. I think I did like one project with a friend of mine where I had her living there, and that was just because it was a small thing, and it was mostly at the lead character's home. So I'm like, whatever, I'll just do another one here. So yeah, so I started, you know, meeting more actors, making more contacts, making more stuff. And because I didn't have a car, sometimes if I was doing like a little project, I would have to meet up, or I'd have to have, one of my actor friends come and pick me up or drop me off, so on and so forth. And one thing of the many that the bishop at the church I went to didn't like being get was, I extremely introverted, had a really hard time talking to girls, hard time getting girls to go out with me. I was a little bit of an incel in high school. I really was, to a degree, not to an extreme, but to a degree. And and especially, I finished college and I was kind of just working on my movies and going to work, and I wasn't really, I was meeting people, but I was meeting actors for the most part during this time. And the bishop would always harp on me about getting a girlfriend. And I was just like, when I was going through some file crates that just had a bunch of random stuff I stuck in them during the various times that I've moved over the past, a little over 3 years, I found a letter that I'd written to the bishop, pretty much roasting him. He probably would have kicked me out of the house if he actually read it. I remember putting it in an envelope, going over to the church and putting it into his box, and then like getting home and then thinking it over and realizing that this was kind of a volatile situation that I was creating for myself, because I was not making enough money to move out at that point. I kind of was, but I didn't have a place to go. So I actually crept back over. Fortunately, I didn't like slip it under his door. I put it in his box. That's just in the hall once you enter. So I was able to run in there, get the letter out, and he never actually got it. But I found that letter. I obviously kept it, probably to laugh at years later. And yeah, and you just hear just so much anger. The anger built over time, and part of the reason the anger built was just they just didn't. It's unfortunate. You have people that just don't get it and never will, and that was unfortunately this situation. Um, the bishop, and I don't want to talk too much about my church drama. I'm here to talk about film drama, but it just kind of leads us in there. But the bishop at the church I used to go to had a very severe inferiority complex, and was thoroughly convinced he was the hardest working human being in the world, which was very frustrating because you had to constantly hear him griping about how hard his life was when he wouldn't do anything to adjust it. He really wouldn't, you know. He did what I used to do. It was always like, I don't have time to change this. I don't have time to get a new job. And it's like, you can make it work if you really want to. And if you don't want to, then shut up and accept your fate. I'm sorry. Um, But I went to University of Portland for a year. It was exhausting. I broke my ass doing film work. You can tell by the amount of content I put out, even in quarantine. I'm a worker bee. It's almost these days are almost the hardest days where I try to make myself just chill for the day and not really even on a day where I'm chilling. Here I am live streaming. And I would mention that I've never really ever complained about how tired I was, even though I was constantly doing stuff. And the few times that I would ever say, oh man, I've been working really hard on this. This is, I'm exhausted. And I remember one time in particular, him laughing and snickering and saying, "You don't know what tired is." He literally said that to my face after I'd been just busting ass on stuff. And it's that inferiority complex that like I work hard, so therefore you don't have the right to say you do. It's that thing that people do that I freaking hate, where it's like when you talk about going through a stressful time or working really hard on someone or feeling really exhausted and wiped out from working really hard. So the person you're talking to always has to come back to you with that like, "Oh, you think that's hard? Oh, well, guess what I had to do?" It's like, we're not fucking talking about you right now. Can we talk about me for 5 seconds? Um, I can't stand that crap. Like, just because I'm tired and exhausted does not mean I'm saying you don't go through the same thing. I'm sorry that you apparently just can't handle that. Um, so yeah, life over time got pretty hard living there, and it got to a point where I pretty much tried to be in hiding. Um, I I had a friend. I'd go over to his place a lot. There'd be periods where I wouldn't go home for 3 or 4 days just because I didn't want to be there. And if I was there, I literally constantly made it like I wasn't home. Like if I was in my room watching TV and I heard somebody upstairs come downstairs, I would pause everything. It was, it was just that situation. I know it's like, oh my God, that's like a terrible thing. It's just like, whatever. It was better than the alternative. I honestly didn't want to get didn't want to get pestered by anybody in that house after enough time. And I could spend hours talking about what led to my life there being like that. But in talking about the bishop and how he just didn't get certain things. And I remember in the letter thing that I wrote, one of the things I wrote about was he would make fun of me. And it was hard. I read a really, even after I got over the incel bullshit, it was really hard. It's always been hard for me. Well, I mean, it's not anymore. I have a girlfriend, so I don't have to be like looking for romance with others anymore. And but it was really hard because it was so hard for me to just you know try to talk to girls, to try to get them interested in me. And so that bothered me and depressed me for a long time. And the bishop would like mock me and be like, "Hey, when are you getting a girlfriend? Hey, when are you getting a girlfriend?" It's like, none of your fucking business. Maybe I'm gonna be alone for the rest of my life. That's depressing. But some people want that. Some people don't. They don't want anybody in a long-term romantic thing. We are who we are individually, and so it was none of his business. And he knew how hard it was for me. So it was just so conniving, just so dickish to like mock me. And I remember writing in that letter, like, making fun of you're supposed to be a man of God and you're sitting here making fun of me for not having a girlfriend. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Or something along those lines. I doubt I dropped an F bomb, but again, a guy who just didn't get it. And as I started doing these film projects and hooking up with, various actors, many of whom were female, because I had a lot of films that had, female characters or female lead roles. And, he would sometimes see me getting picked up by one of my female actor friends, getting dropped off by a female actor friend. I did a lot of videos with my friend Laura, so they probably saw her show up a couple of times. My friend Carly, who used to live here, we, hung out in addition to making films, so they probably saw her picking me up and dropping me off from time to time. And he would constantly, and literally every single actress that he saw me with. Or even if it was just he saw me with a girl and he didn't even know if it was a film thing. He'd be like, "Who's that? Who's that? She's cute. You should date her. You should date her." And he would say it in a joking manner because you'd be a complete freaking idiot if you honestly believed that every random girl you see me with I should be dating. But I'm not all that convinced he was not somewhat serious. So it was just, it was so, and it was really, it was disrespectful to me. It was disrespectful to the talent I was working with. And it's just like, here I am trying to get a film career off the ground. I'm trying to be professional. Do I like these actresses I'm working with? Yes. Are they very attractive, to me? Some of them probably, yes, of course. Um, but this was a professional environment. Okay. I'm not going to be posting casting calls, then bringing on somebody for a film, and then when we're done, it's like, hey, want to go out sometime? You know, if there's a spark there that works, great. You know, if something happened between me and one of my actresses ultimately, great. You know, that happens, obviously. But this idea, but it was this like, what I was doing was insignificant, was essentially his attitude. And I understand trying to get off your career as a filmmaker. I know a lot of people look at that as, oh, haha, that's cute. When are you going to get a real job? And it's like, well, first of all, what the fuck does that even mean anyway? A real job. I mean, we are kind of learning more and what are essential work as opposed to non-essential work. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that like just because I'm not working right now does not mean that, what I do is completely irrelevant. It just means that there's people out there that are freaking having to constantly face stuff every day that I don't have to, that should be getting paid a boatload. Oh my God. This thing just drained. So yeah, this drains my battery so fast. I think my battery is garbage. Yeah. This is a generic replacement battery. I'm probably gonna lose my game. Get in there. Am I gonna make it in time? Plug you in. Okay, I think I got to you in time. Oh, that happened on my first live chat or live stream. Yeah, no. This battery was at about 70% when I started, and I'm only 17 and a half minutes in, and it was down to 4%. So either live streaming really zaps my battery, which makes no sense to me, or this battery. I mean, it was a replacement. The other battery I had in here for like 6+ years. I've had this battery in here for like a year. It's a cheap generic battery. I wasn't expecting it to last too long. I have my Mac plugged in most of the time anyway, but whoo, avoided a scare there. Anyway, that's probably for the best because I was starting to get off on kind of a tangent there. But no, it was just frustrating to see what I was doing not being respected. And the people I was working with, not these are people that Bishop didn't even know. These could have been people that were good actors for film, but horrible people in real life. He didn't know, but it was like, oh, you're with a girl. Ha ha, look at you hanging out with girls. Ha ha ha. He might as well have just said, I thought you were gay after all this time, right to my face like a stupid idiot. God, I'm so glad I got out of there. It just got so, I was just so unhappy living there. And then one day my buddy Nick said, hey, one of our roommates is moving out. We need a replacement fast. Like, do you want to move in? And, I'm always wanting to be like, oh, God, about these, life altering changes. And I just felt like, oh, God, you're going to pussy out on this. You're like, oh, thanks, but I don't know if I'm ready for that. And it's like, whoa, Steve, slow down. You've been looking for an opportunity to move out for how long? To get out of this horrible situation, and now something is being handed to you, literally put in your lap. And so yeah, after like the brief couple of seconds of panic, I was like, yeah, I'm in. And it was a great decision. I really enjoyed that, and it could have been a crappy environment, but I mean, it wasn't going to be any worse than what I was living in anyway. I was, in short, the bishop at my church just started losing his mind. He really did. Because he was overworked. He already had this kind of inferiority complex, and his wife, who he'd been married to forever, left him, which I kind of saw happening because she actually got a good job that she could support herself on, and I could tell she wasn't happy. But anyway, so for a while, she's gone, and it's just me in the basement, living in the house alone with the preacher man of our church, who emotionally, I don't know what state he's in. And then suddenly I start hearing this like murmurs upstairs of a female voice I don't know. And I step out of my room, and here he is with this random um, Cuban woman. And he was like, "Hey, Steve, this is my wife." And I was like, "Oh, and he's like, "No, I'm serious. This is my wife." He like apparently, and I didn't even notice it. He like went to Florida and married this woman from Cuba who doesn't speak any English. And obviously I'm not saying she has to learn English. I'm just saying this is just a woman who doesn't speak the same language as them. How they communicate, I don't know, because it seemed like she would just speak her language and he wouldn't. And when I hear them argue upstairs, I'd constantly hear him go, "I don't understand what you're saying. I don't know what you're mad about." And it's like, well, because you married someone who doesn't speak the same language as you, and neither one of you seems to care about being able to communicate with one another. It got so weird, and his wife was just a total lunatic drama queen. He said that she was like kind of a pseudo celebrity in Cuba. I don't know if that's true, but she sure acted like one. Um, so yeah, I needed to. Oh God, did I need to get out of there so bad. And yeah, that was that. And so yeah, and I didn't need that crap. I didn't need him trying to hook me up with people I already knew. You know, the only thing that's the only thing you're much more likely to affect my relationship in terms of me. The individual alone is more likely to affect the. Sorry, I'm not putting these words together well. The actress or actor that I work with. Um, you know, if anything is going to get more positive or more negative between me and that person, that's between the two of us. Um, you know, eh, for instance, there's only one actress or actor. There's only one actor that I've ever literally, I wouldn't even say fired, especially since it was like a really early project. It was no pay, so I mean, I guess you're still getting hired for a job, but I pretty much, it wasn't even really a firing. It was more I, as the filmmaker, walked out on them, and it was I had just gotten my first DSLR camera, and of course, I had it. I had my computer to edit film on, so all of a sudden, like, I could go out and do my own stuff now. I didn't have to bum stuff from the school and worry about having to have it back at a certain time. And so I wrote this little script. Um, it was just kind of whatever. It was a way of having an idea to film and hiring some actors. It was a bunch of like pretty much vignettes for between various characters. So it was a way of hiring a bunch of actors, shooting these little parts independently with them, and getting more experience as a filmmaker. And I was able to do most of them pretty quick, but there was one character that I swear was just cursed. I had to go through like four actresses before I could finally get it done. Um, and every other one, it was just real quick, boom, boom, boom. And I forget what happened with the first person I brought on, but the second person I brought on, um, we met. She was kind of Lindsay Lohanish looking, but like Lindsay Lohan now, like Lindsay Lohan with some drugs in her system. But we got along pretty well, and I could tell she was a little bit rough around the edges, but we got along well, and she seemed psyched. It was chill, and I was like, okay, this is going to be easy. And again, I've just started doing film stuff. So I don't have a crew with me. It's just me, you know, camera in one hand, mic in the other hand. You know, the epitome of essentially guerrilla filmmaking. So we had an okay initial meeting. You know, it's a few days later, a week later, however long it was. She shows up. I'm standing outside with my film equipment waiting for her. And she shows up, and I kid you not, before I could even say hello, she pulls up, kind of stops abruptly, and rolls down her window and looks at me. And she's like, all right, when the fuck are we going to do this? And she was like really tense and really edgy. I don't know if she was like doing drugs and was like coming down off of them and didn't have any more. There was just kind of a angry, bitter, twitchy edge to her that was completely not there when we met the first time. It was like her personality kind of not flipped, but kind of jolted a little bit in a new direction. And it was really hot, you know, outside. It was, I think it was May, and we were just having that first run of hot weather. And she was just on edge the whole time. We couldn't get through one shot without her just going like, you know, those sounds that you hate to hear, whether they're directed at you or not. And so, like, and of course, immediately I'm a little bit annoyed because it's like she shows up and immediately is like, all right, where the fuck are we doing this? And I'm just like, okay, I know you don't have a contract, you're not getting paid. This isn't, you know, a high-end thing that's going to be on TV, getting released in theaters, but you still behave professionally. I'm a filmmaker, you're the talent. You still be respectful in that dynamic. All right? I don't care what you are or aren't getting. And everything that was happening was understood, was agreed to. It was, you know, she knew how it was going to be. She knew what kind of equipment I had. And then I remember she was like, what kind of a camera do you have? And then I showed her my camera, and she kind of was like, oh. It's because, you know, it was a Canon DSLR, and she clearly didn't know anything about cameras. And if you look at the Canon DSLR, it takes pictures too, but it looks like a picture camera, you know? It doesn't look like, you know, what you think of when you think of a film camera. You know, it's the body with a big lens you stick on it. And so I think she looked at it and thought, oh, that's like a picture camera that can take video. So therefore it's like not a good camera. Jesus, I don't freaking know. But it was horrible. You know, as we started going, I was just grateful that this was a short thing. I was only going to have to deal with this person's company for like a couple hours. So that was kind of my drive. I was like, just, you know, it's not going to take long. Just deal, you're fine. And because that's kind of how I was, you know, and I wasn't, you know, that experienced in the field yet. And so I kind of just I was doing that, like, you know, because you're new to this, you got to deal with the crap, was kind of, I think, my attitude. And we got literally like 90% of the way through. We were down to literally, I don't even know if we had more than like 5 shots left for like one little sequence. And it, you know, we were driving to this spot, and it just dawned on me, you know, no, you don't have to deal with this. You know, just because you're not Steven Spielberg and just because this is a non-paying role does not mean you're allowed to be treated like shit. I understand that's a very American attitude. Is like, oh, well, I'm not getting money, well, then I don't have to give a shit. And it's like, if you don't give a shit, don't do it, whatever you're doing. Well, I feel like it's product placement. I'm like, don't do it. And I start to realize, like, I had such disdain for this person that I was like, we're almost done shooting. I don't even want her in the film now, because if I ever come back and watch it, I'm gonna be like, oh, it's her. Well, now watching this is tainted a bit. And so my mind is starting to shift, in terms of how much I'm prepared to tolerate at this point. And we were doing a shot where we decided, it was we were in her car and it was just kind of this little thing she had to do for a few seconds. So we just decided, this was literally how we discussed it. It was like, I'm just gonna start recording and record you doing your thing, and then we're not even gonna do cut because she was getting all, just, yeah, yeah, I want this over. Why are we still making movies? And I was done with it, and it was hot, so I was like, fine, let's go through this as quickly as possible. Don't cut. Just, I'll move the camera to a new angle, and that's your indication. This is a new take. I'll film you from up here, over here, and then when I move over here, new take. This was what we discussed. It was her idea, even. So I say action, start recording, and again, I'm kind of feeling like I'm ready to be done. And I get one angle, and then I move to another. And then I move to a third angle, and apparently she thought all this time, even though she was acting out the thing she was supposed to be acting out on the camera, she apparently gets the wild opinion that I'm just indecisive and can't figure out where I want my angle to be. So the like holding the camera still for a while, getting a take, and then moving was just me not being able to figure out where I want to be. So she apparently, for some reason, thought that I just wasn't going yet. And so literally, I had it on video, because I deleted all of it. I wanted that crap gone forever. She all of a sudden says, just fucking do it already. Which usually is something a very troubled, inexperienced guy hears in bed at some point in his life. Just do it already. And so I said, oh no, I'm doing it. And then said cut and stopped it. And then she was like, oh, okay. What's next? And I was like, okay, we'll just pull over to the side of the road. And she's like, okay. And she pulled over, and I was like, all right, we're done here. And I proceeded to put my stuff in my bag as quickly as possible, got the door open as quickly as possible because I didn't want to deal with any drama. I wanted to be out of that car. And so, of course, she's just like, what? Wait, what? Don't we have like another thing? And I was like, no, no, no. Like, we didn't finish, but like, we're done here. And I got out of the car and walked away. I was like 3 miles away from home, and I did not mind at all having to walk all the way home in that blistering heat. It was better than spending 5 more minutes with this person. And of course, you got the usual thing you'd expect to happen. I got out of the car, started walking away. She rolled down her window as she started to speed off and yelled, you're a stupid fucker. I don't remember what the fuck she said. It was not really worth remembering. It was what you'd expect someone to say who's a shitty person in that scenario. I actually saw her pop up as a Facebook friend suggestion a couple months ago, and I was like, hell no. I don't care if she's straightened out, which she probably hasn't. And that's, I mean, again, I'm not trying to pass a judgment here, but that happens a lot when you hire models with practically no film experience. Again, my friend Laura has done a boatload of modeling. She's also done acting and is very good at it. So I'm not saying that models are bad actors. I'm just saying this girl that I had this horrible experience with she was a model, had no prior film experience, and she was a nightmare to work with. And, when I did a later film, I brought on a girl who was, had just done modeling and was looking to get into film. And she was, she seemed chill when we met, but she turned out to be just kind of a diva. And I ended up not having her in the film, not because I couldn't handle her attitude, but it was like, it was this film that took me 6 months to get done. I kept track. There was 18 days, shooting days we had to cancel. And one of them was because of weather. And one of them was because I wasn't feeling well. So there were 16 other shooting days that were canceled because someone in the film suddenly wasn't available. And, when you're a super low independent filmmaker and you're shooting a film with no budget, literally no budget. I did a feature film and I spent like $200. it's understood that sometimes things are going to come up and you're going to have to postpone shoots. I understand that and accept that under those circumstances. It's also another reason why I finally put myself in a place where I'm not going to be doing big film projects without at least money, money to pay, my talent. It's not that I haven't wanted to. It's just, what, 2012, the first year I started doing film, I probably made about $12,000 that year because I was working a part-time job and going to school. And that part-time job, I was probably making $9 an hour at. So you do the math. I mean, literally, it wasn't that I was trying to just, scam, acting talent without pay. The most I could. It was I literally couldn't afford to pay, and I made that known to people. Like, if you can't work for no pay, I totally understand. I'm not going to begrudge you or act like you're like an elitist in some way. Like, just like me, a lot of actors have to work a side part-time job. A lot of actors need to get paid, especially ones who that's their primary job. Like, you can't volunteer all the time for your primary method of making money. That doesn't make sense. You're going to end up homeless on the street. But anyway, this one girl, we met. We had a pretty okay meeting. No red flags. And then, this, and again, so many canceled shooting days already. And I swear, she ends up canceling on one day. I don't even remember why, but I want to say it was for some dumb reason. And then we reschedule. And again, I have a sound person. I have, other actors. Like, a bunch of people are setting their schedules to shoot on these days too. And I swear, she contacts me about 2 hours before we're supposed to meet and shoot her part in the film. And she text messages me this long na about how she was. It wasn't even that she was like having an anxiety attack, but it was just she was like, "I'm just stressed today," and I'm like freaking out. I'm like, and I can't do it. I can't do it today. It wasn't even like, I'm stressed. Can we postpone? It wasn't like asking. It was like, I'm not doing it today. And I was like, all right, then I'm getting someone else because I'm not dealing with this. And it's funny because the lead character in this film I did, Runaway Highway, the lead character, my friend Carrie, her sister ended up playing that role in the film when all was said and done because it was like I was back to the drawing board. And I don't know, I don't know why I felt awkward because the film revolves around the lead character's um, relationship with her sister. I don't know why I didn't just ask, "Hey, your sister's also an actress. How about we just have her play your sister in the movie?" Um, I don't know. I don't know if I felt that was tacky or I don't know what I was thinking. Um, so I ended up getting another actress who did a perfectly fine job being her sister, aside from not really looking anything like her. Um, and her sister ended up ultimately still being in the film as this random character that I had to get someone for. And I was actually, I was a sound person in a film with her sister, like right after another film that I did. And that was the first time in my life that I legitimately threw my back out. Um, I was going in a new direction, but anyway, I might as well bring you this story now. Um, okay, so it had been forever since I'd done like a me film, and I did Runaway Highway. It took 6 months to shoot. It took forever to edit because it was a feature. It was my first legitimate feature film, so it was like, oh yeah. We started filming it in May of 2015, and it wasn't till I think March 2017 that I finally was like, I got it done. Um, and it took forever for me to get my next film, and it's because Runaway Highway was so unexpectedly popular with everyone who saw it. Um, that the ego starts kicking in, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, I gotta come up with something better than that, and all these ideas I came up with, nothing was good enough. That kind of stuff started happening, and I and so I finally got this new film off the ground, and while Runaway Highway took 6 months to shoot. This more recent film I did, um, in the end, is only about 7, 8 minutes shorter. And while Runaway Highway took 6 months, this other film took 17 days. We ran ourselves through the ringer to get this film done. And that included, okay, I'll put the, oh, sorry, my guy just went down a crevasse. So it's October 1st, 2018. And we have 2 more shooting days. We had to do all the interiors for the film, which we shot like 37 pages of script in 2 shooting days, about 25 hours, which is unheard of, but we unfortunately didn't have an option. So we had about a 12-hour shooting day on October 1st. October 2nd, I worked an 8-hour shift at my job, and then my friend Carrie from Runaway Highway had a show that she was doing that I helped on. So after work, I go get my sound stuff and I have to go all the way to like the Alphabet District so we can do an episode of that show. So I don't get home till like 7 o'clock at night. And then the next day, Wednesday, October 3rd, we had to finish the film. It was a 13 and a half hour shooting day, if I'm correct. So then the next 2 days, I work 2 8-hour shifts, so 16 hours at work. And then I got hired on to work this project that Carrie's sister was in. So that was pretty much 2 back-to-back, like 10-hour days. So I pretty much did a side gig, worked 24 hours at my regular job, and did about 40 to 45 hours of film work. And by the time I was done with that side project, my back, even the whole last day, my back was in excruciating pain. And by the time I woke up the next morning, I couldn't walk for 4 days. I mean, I had to formulate a structured plan on how to get up because I couldn't sit up. My back was in, so like I literally had just destroyed my back. And it sucked. Oh, hey, I'm getting some comments. I'm sorry. I am horrible at paying attention to the comments, probably because I'm multitasking. This just makes the storytelling better. Hey, what's up? Oh, crap. And then I almost went off the... This is why I don't look at the comments. Because my guy almost went off the road. Oh, boy. It is a day. This is a day. What is it? March 4th? Anyway. But yeah, so, I have had to deal with the, the replacement crap. The issue of having to replace certain actors with other actors. Like one project I did was, what was it? Oh yeah, it was this film I did called When Living Without. It was about being a drug addict and suddenly having all of your resources kind of dry up and just how you just break down over time. And I honestly don't know how accurate it was as somebody who's never been a drug addict. I wrote the whole script like just sitting in my room for 6 hours. I don't know where it came from. It just kind of happened, and then I wrote it, and I was like, all right, well, might as well make this movie too. And an actress who I'd actually worked with once before, the day we were supposed to shoot, like I think her grandma passed away. And it was one of those things where it was horrible. As a filmmaker, you have to have these, and you don't mean them to be, but you sometimes have to have these dickhead moments where you would like almost have to be like trying the best you can to not be, but you almost have to kind of be a jerk. And so unfortunately, it was one of those things where it was like, we had to get this film done. We were running out of time. And so, here's a person who I've worked with before, who I really liked and who was going through this really tragic thing of her, I think it was her grandmother died. But I also had to be like, hey, because we actually had someone helping on crew who actually kind of looked the part and had kind of acted a little bit. And so I had to ask, like, hey, like, we're still filming right now, and like, I have someone. We just kind of need to get it done, and so I have someone that I can play the role. If you don't have any serious objections, um, like, we'll replace you with someone. And she was like, "Yeah, then do what you have to do." And it just sucked because you want to just be like, "Oh God, that's what you know. What? Don't even worry about shooting today. We'll figure it out." And sometimes you can do that, but other times, the way the scheduling is and the way things are, you just have things have to happen. The worst I ever felt. I did this film, Our Worlds Collide, and I actually was going to do another film project that didn't happen. And this guy named Tim, he was a sound guy, had a resume like 14 miles long. And um, he was one of those guys you could tell just really loved doing what he did, which was sound work. Because he'd gotten paid for so much work that he was willing to periodically do stuff for free. And he did my sound stuff for free, and he was grateful for the opportunity. It blew me away. And he had the real stuff. He had, like 10 lav mics. He had like this box that looked like a mini amplifier that he hooked everything into. I'd watch him. We'd film a scene in a car, and like while I'm talking to my talent and getting my camera set, he's rigging and hiding, lav mics in like the visors of the car and stuff, and just killed it. And pretty much was agreed to do sound because we were already talking about him doing sound on this other project. And I was like, hey, I had to put that one aside, but how about this one? He was like, yeah, sure. So he would get the sound done, take it home, and then he would send me, like through Dropbox, he would send me folders, with the audio in them, like, after we'd finished shooting. So we get the last day of shooting done. Um, and like one day goes by, 2 days go by, 3 days go by, and I haven't gotten like the last sound that he needs to give me. It's one of those things where it's like, I have to have just like all the video, you got to have all of the audio, or else you don't have a finished film. So I message him like, oh, hey, is everything good with the audio, or is the audio? And he's like, oh yeah, sorry, I haven't sent that to you. I ended up in the hospital with like a really bad. It was like a really, I don't think it was kidney failure, but it was like a really bad kidney issue. And so again, it was one of those situations where it was just unfortunately time sensitive. And I was like, oh God, man, I'm sorry. Oh yeah, no worries. Um, but do you know when you're gonna be able to get me the audio? Um, and it was fair. He was professional, but he took the opportunity to throw just a little bit of shade at me. He was like, "Oh yeah, no problem. I promise you, I'll get it to you. The moment I can, Steve. No problem. I just haven't been able to because of the being in the hospital thing." It's like, okay, fair enough. And it's I remember I was sitting on the bus going to work, and I felt the goosebumps forming. I was cringing myself just having to do that. And that's the thing that sucks is, sometimes you have to, not only do you have to do stuff like that, but sometimes the stuff you have to do is a lot worse than just, oh, you're going through a hard time. Well, I still need stuff from you. Like, it can get so much worse in terms of the stuff you got to deal with. Um, God, it sucks. Thank you, coronavirus. Great timing. I, I took a little bit of time off after finishing this most recent film that I did. It was good. I hadn't done a film in a while, and the film I did, I think, is going to be okay. Um, but it also, I was able to get the kind of rust out, um, and make it a little bit easier. Like I remembered, oh well, this is how you don't do this, and so on and so forth. So I feel a lot better about getting back into filmmaking now. But again, I kind of went through a period where I was trying to figure out what's the next project I want to do. What's the next project I want to do? Because it was around the start of 2019 that I was getting this other film closer to being done, and so you kind of start thinking, okay, well, what do I want to do after this? And ultimately, I decided I started writing, and it actually was like I started writing it in the fall, um, and pretty much it was after my first, with my dry eye and stuff. It was like the first time that I actually was starting to feel better. The eye drops I was taking was working, and I was actually able to sit at my computer for more than 2 minutes without my head wanting to explode. And I just started writing. And I kind of had, um, I'd had like one sort of semi-structured idea that I feel like this new thing kind of came out of, and I've always been a fan of crime drama, suspense films, but I've never really done one. I think I'm one of those filmmakers that does a lot of the films I do are the kind of films I wouldn't necessarily watch if somebody else did them, if that makes sense. I'm a big, Hitchcock guy. I'm a big Sidney Lumet guy. I'm a big Martin Scorsese guy. But or even a Christopher Nolan guy. But I've never done, and obviously a lot of it's budgetary. Obviously, I could never do a Christopher Nolan film on a couple $100. But yeah, I've never really, and so I wanted to do something that was a little bit more in kind of a darker direction. Like I've done stuff that's dealt with dark themes, but they haven't been necessarily super dark films. Um, Maybe dark in a certain way, like emotionally dark or physically dark, but not like all encompassing dark. I've also I'm also, probably people say it's because I'm a Scorpio. I'm also, super interested in true crime and, serial killer type stuff. And so I kind of started playing with that. And that's all I'll say. I obviously don't want it because I still plan on doing it. And, I sat down and I wrote like 80%, I wrote like 65 pages in 2 days. And I literally had barely anything in my head and that's when I write the best, is when I have either nothing pre-planned or I have a very minute amount pre-planned. And I just sit down and just start writing. And then the storyline kind of comes out. And you just let it go. You just go as long as you can because you can come back and edit it later if things don't work. And so I got the script done. And it was one of these things where, I knew it was something new and I knew it was something that I could really play with and really stylize and really do a lot of things with that even to this point I haven't really done yet, besides, the mood and the structure of the film, the storyline. And my friend Laura, who I've mentioned in this thing, who's literally, I've counted them. She's worked on 9 different things that I've done. She was in Runaway Highway briefly. She's done like small appearances in some films I've done, but first time we worked together was in a student project that we did. That's a story. That whole project experience is a story. And then, she was the lead in a few little comedy pieces I did. And she even did, I tried making we would have these yearly like customer service contest videos that were ultimately kind of a joke at my theater because I thought they wanted something creative about customer service when really they just wanted a video where someone just spit out the guidelines for how to make a customer happy that the theater had pre-established. So they really wanted no creativity at all. So the first year, the video I did got like an honorable mention, and all of the videos always suck. There's like one out of every 100 that are actually entertaining. A lot of them are cringy. And then the next year, I made a better video, didn't even get an honorable mention. So after that, I was like, well, I'm not going to do these stupid videos anymore if the whole objective is just to spoon feed their corporate agenda to people. But both years, I did it 2 years in a row, and both times Laura was the patron, the customer in the video. Um, and we haven't worked with each other since I think Runaway Highway. Or actually, it may have been because the customer service. Yeah, no, it's funny. May 28th, 2015. I remember all these dates for some reason. That was the first day of shooting on Runaway Highway, and that was the day that she filmed with us. And the no, I'm thinking of a corporate meeting we had. Never mind. It was around the same time. But anyway, I haven't worked with Laura in almost 5 years, and she answered the ad. Or she didn't. She didn't answer the ad, but she actually messaged me. It's like, "Hey, long time no see." And she was like, "Yeah, I saw this casting call, and I saw the production company. It said Silly Sister Pictures." It was like, "Isn't that you?" I was like, "Yeah, that's me." Um, and she was like, "Yeah, I'm totally interested in the idea." And I really, really pressured her to be the lead, which actually originally the lead was going to be like a woman in her 40s. I originally was seeing the lead character as older, and it was one of those things where it was like, it was just the way I was seeing it. So after a while, I was like, but there's nothing about the character or the storyline that says she has to be that. And I wanted a character who was, attractive and could, attractive enough to like be able to manipulate people. So a devil with an angel's face. Now, if my friend Laura turned out to be a serial killer, then that would be perfect. So that's where I was like, she would be perfect for this because you look at her and you're like, there's no way she's a bad person. There's no way she does anything sketchy. Um, and so I was like, oh, that makes her perfect for this character. Um, so, we were like, it was already like she was probably going to at least be in the film as some character. And right as we were getting to the point where it was like, oh, hey, yeah, let's have you be in the movie and let's have you be in the lead, all this coronavirus crap started happening. And now we're just waiting it out, which I guess is giving me more time to get the film ready, which admittedly I haven't really been doing. I haven't really worked on that at all, but it's not like quarantine's going to end this week. And the thing was almost pretty much ready to go anyway. So here we are. We're just kind of waiting. I have another script idea that I've been bouncing around in my head the last couple of months. That would be a very outdoor summer type thing. And I'm thinking about starting to try working on that because, like, you know, they keep telling us coronavirus is probably going to come back late fall. We don't know what's going to happen really, but it seems like we're looking another quarantine in the face this winter. I hate to even think about it, but that might be around the corner. So that means more time not making films. And so, if we have a green light to kind of semi resume what was normal lives, over the summer, I'm gonna want to make any film stuff I can do. I want to do because at least then I don't have to sit in quarantine and think, God, I had all that time to do that stuff and didn't do it. I can at least shoot the film, and I can be in quarantine while I'm editing it. So I'm really hoping we can at least do that film this summer. If not, I can do more stuff this summer, maybe into September if the stars align. Yeah, my friend Carrie, I was talking about, doing a film with her sister, and she ended up, she was taking a film class in school, and I was going to help her on a project doing sound that we were going to do like March 20th. And so, of course, we kind of are in talks, and we get kind of set, and I text her. It's like right around the time that like the theater closed and the NBA shut down. And I was like, so blah 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 blah. Do I need this one? And she was like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. We're gonna delay the project till sometime in April because of this sickness going around. Of course, April's come and gone, so who knows? That project's probably never going to happen now. But another thing that coronavirus took away from us. But it's one of the best things you can do while we're stuck indoors is get yourself prepared for the time that you may have outside when we can hopefully start going outside again, because that is probably going to be a short period of time. Again, I don't know, but end of October into November, we may all get shoved back into quarantine again, which is worrisome. Like, we can handle a couple of months now, but if we have to handle a couple of months now and then suddenly have to do it again a couple months further down the road, yeah, that's not the shot in the arm our economy needs. But yeah, so I'm really, I haven't even cast the rest of the film yet because it's like, I don't even know when we're going to do it. And, I'll have time to do that. It's more important to have the film ready to go. You don't want to start casting people when you don't even know if a film's going to happen. word from the wise, having been unwise. Because, yeah, the first several months that I was getting into film was filled with lessons. Because, I didn't even know how long I was going to want to be in the film program. I went through this stage of depression that lasted kind of off and on for like 3 months back in 2012. And I almost, because, when you get depressed, you sometimes want to rapidly, drastically change everything about your life. There's some comfort in that, I guess, because you feel horrible in the skin you're in. And so you think, if I become somebody else completely, something will change. I really don't know. And I don't do well with depression because I'm not a depressive person. I may, go out there and get things done. And when you get to a mental state where you suddenly don't want to do anything and you feel shitty about everything and nothing gives you life, it's horrendously frightening. I have the utmost respect, seriously, for people who are like chronically depressed, and still get through their days. Because I've endured depression, a combined total of maybe about 6 months out of my life, and just 2 random moments that happened many years ago that just kind of came and went. And it was unbearable. It was also only 6 months. It wasn't a lifetime. So yeah, anybody that can endure feelings like that, and sometimes worse than what I was feeling, who have to deal with that off and on for their whole lifetime, that is a fight that I couldn't even begin to win. And off that topic, yeah, a lot of weird stuff started happening. But in talking about wanting to drastically change my life, I actually contemplated for about 2 weeks becoming a nurse, going into nursing school. I don't know what the F I was thinking. And I was thinking security. I had gone through a really bad breakup, and like most men, I was like, oh, well, I'm gonna, focus on my job and security. Even being depressed, that was in the back of my head. And, I told my aunt about it, and she was like, you should really think about that. It's not just something you just kind of walk into. And I was like, yeah, I know. And fortunately, my head cleared enough to realize that that was not, like, I was going the polar opposite of who I am. Obviously not to knock nurses, especially now. But it was not for me. Like, and during this time, the church used to be and again, this is while I was living at the rectory home, and we were associated with this monastery out in rural Montana. But there was only 2 guys there, one of whom was getting older, and they were, thinking about the future and how they needed, some young blood in there, if nothing more, to keep their monastery alive. Because if they just both ended up dead and gone, like, the monastery's gone. And I later found out, because, again, they used to be associated with us, and the 2 guys that, were that monastery, they came and stayed with us for like, a month or two. And the head guy there was kind of he was kind of like taking me under his wing a little bit. And I thought he was just doing it to be, a nice man of God. And so I started talking about the nursing stuff, and he was all for it, not because he thought it was genuinely going to be good for me, but because it served him well, because his monastery was like 20 miles from, I think, Montana State. And he was like, well, you know what you could do? Like, you could move to the monastery with us, and just, we can do our work. And then you can, make money on the side as go to school for nursing, and you can work at the hospital in town, 20, 30 hours a week or something. And I tell you, because again, I was not in a good state of mind. I seriously contemplated that for about a week before I was kind of like, not quite. Not obviously, you want to be part of a monastery. That's fantastic. But I was, I'm just glad the clouds were kind of breaking when they did, because I may have made some wild decisions with my life. And I later found out that they were literally just it wasn't even just him trying to help me out. They were trying to pilfer some of our people, and it ended up like leading to a total disassociation between us and their monastery. They were essentially trying to steal people from our church to go be with them to keep their monastery alive. And they saw me, I was 26 at the time, and I was this young guy that could keep their monastery going. I had potential. So I thought he was just trying to help me, when really he was trying to coax me into leaving the church that I was going to be part of their monastery. And he tried to do the same thing with my stepdad. I wish he would have done it, because then that asshole wouldn't be around here anymore. Because apparently he said something to my mom. Mind you, like I think they had literally just gotten, it was 2012. They had literally just gotten married. Ugh, gross. I hate thinking about that. But yeah, my mom and her husband had just gotten married, and he was the main guy at this monastery, was also trying to get him. He was trying to kind of coax him to leave, and he literally told my mom that she was not a permanent part of his like future. They had just gotten married. They'd been married for like 2 months by this time. Unless I'm confusing my years. But even if I am, it was within months of them getting married. Now I can't remember if they got married in 2012 or 2013. Anyway, he was trying to pilfer us. They got obviously banned from the church. And so it was just, there was a lot of stuff going on. And I decided, okay, I don't know if I want to do the film thing anymore. You know what? I saw that there was one film class available, an actual film, production class available summer of 2012. And I was like, okay, I'm going to take that class. And if I still feel about it, then I'll figure out something new to go after. And lo and behold, a lot of the stuff I was like, I need to learn this stuff, and I haven't learned it yet, I learned in that class. It was essentially an all-encompassing learn how to use film equipment type class, which I didn't realize it was going to necessarily be that, because it had a very generic name. And, I have limited experience with the equipment and stuff, but at the end of the term, pretty much the last 3 weeks was, hey, we're going to, you can break up into groups, or you can do it on your own, whatever you want to do. And you're going to produce a little short 5-minute film, use what you've learned in this class to just do a little film project, nothing big. And so I was one of 2 people in the class that decided to do my own thing and not work in a group, which of course there's benefits to working in a group, such as you have a crew already on hand. So I ended up pulling up this script I'd written that was really, I think it was going to be for like more of like a 30-minute long movie. So of course I had to chisel a lot out of it, and I ended up with this 5-page script when all was said and done. It ended up being 11 minutes, but I got the script to the right length. That's what happens when there's little dialogue and a lot of character description and scene direction. You're going to have a longer film. You write a 30-page script that's all action, it's going to be an hour-long movie, at least. And so I did the film. Again, I had no crew. Literally, I'm using a camera I barely know how to use. I'm editing with a program that I have limited experience on. I barely know how to color correct. I barely know how to sharpen, you know. And it's not the Stone Age, but it's 2012, and like things were a little bit harder, in certain aspects than they are now. Um, and I had nobody to hold the mic. I literally have to prop the boom pole up against whatever was closest to us. So there was a lot of restrictions here, and the negative of having to do it all on my own. But I did it, and I threw it together and literally worked on it up until the literally last possible minute before I finally had a final copy done and was able to turn it in. And so, of course, the last day of class, we watch everybody's stuff. And because there was people in that class that had taken multiple classes in the program. There were people that were about to finish that program. And here I am, a guy that's had barely any experience with the equipment. And I don't want to toot my own horn, but, we watched these group projects, and then we watched my film, and mine completely blew every other film in that class out of the water. And I'm not exaggerating. I was blown away. I was like, how did I do so much better than everyone else when I barely knew what I was doing at all? I remember one of the best comments I have ever gotten from someone was there was a girl in the class when the class was ending. She walked up to me to tell me how good it was, and she was like, "That was so good. It like looked like a real movie." And I was like, "Well, thank you." I love comments like that. Like a project I did later in the summer or start of the fall. I got this really good actor, and I sent him the script, and he's like, "I really like this. I really like the story, and I really like the dialogue." And then he said, and I'm saying that as a guy who's been doing a lot of Shakespeare recently. I was like, okay, I'm going to take that comment as, I'm going to translate that in my own mind as in, I'm better than Shakespeare. And then, with your ego, there's no going back after that. You convince yourself that you're better than Shakespeare. There's no going back after that. But, I did that, and I got lucky, Again, when you don't really know what you're doing and you're kind of just using whatever you got and you somehow come away with something good, there's some luck that plays a part in there. I'm certainly not going to deny that. And so, like an idiot, I did this one video and I thought, oh, well, I'm ready to take on the cinematic world. I'm ready for my Oscar. And I decided to, the very next term, the fall, 3 weeks after this term ended, I still have barely any experience with this film equipment, and I have limited usage of the equipment because this is before I got my own DSLR, so I still have to, the film program is fairly new, and we only had like 2 or 3 DSLR cameras, so it wasn't like I could just have it all the time at my disposal. So, the longer your film project, the harder it's going to be to do because you need to have the camera for more time, and you may just not be able to get it. So I had this like almost feature-length script that I was going to do. I was going to blow the world away because it was going to be this was kind of like they call it like your portfolio project. It was essentially like your community college level capstone project, using all the things you learned to make something. And of course, I still had a lot to learn, so I probably should have waited. I ended up getting lucky again and having a pretty good film come out of it in the end. Because, you know, I thought, oh, I did this 11-minute film and that turned out okay. Why can't I do like an 80, 90-minute film? Big mistake. I also, didn't have a crew, and I was also like, oh. So I end up I come up with this project, and I'm ready to go. Boom, boom. I check out a camera the first day of school. I get the lead guy role covered. I get the lead girl role covered. I get a guy to come in and do sound for me, and it's like, we're going to do it. And I met them for the first day, and we weren't even going to film that much. We are going to film like 2 pages. We got together. It took us almost like 45 minutes to get ready because I was having some anxiety. But more importantly, I was just feeling very uncomfortable and realizing, we have a lot of stuff to get done today, and this is only like 4% of the script. All of a sudden, it wasn't, oh, you're just doing like 2 casual, laissez faire, doesn't matter how good it is because you're new to the program thing like I was in the summer. This was like a big thing. And the monstrosity of it was, and so I was just confused, distracted, and I wasn't ready for something that big. I wasn't skilled enough. I wasn't versed enough. I hadn't made enough mistakes to try to suddenly take on something that freaking big. So we start shooting. I kind of don't even really know where our filming spots are gonna be. The shots I'm getting are really bad because I haven't used one of these cameras in like almost a month. And all of a sudden, I'm kind of realizing I still got a lot of more educating to do on myself in terms of rack focusing and, just general cinematic things, cinematography. So it's already not going well. And we go to do the last part for the day. It's already getting dark outside, which it wasn't supposed to do, but it's just taking us forever to get anything done. And that's on me. I'm the director, the guiding light on this whole thing. And all of a sudden, the camera starts like not working properly. I hit record, it all of a sudden stops. I get the little readout that says the video has stopped recording automatically. I'm like, what the hell does that mean? So I hit record again, happens again. Everyone's staring at me like, are we ready to go? And I'm like, I don't know. I go over to my sound guy, who I don't even know if he knows anything about cameras. I'm like, hey, I'm getting this readout thing over here, and he looks at it and immediately is like, oh, well, the class of your SD card isn't high enough. The writing speed isn't fast enough for this camera. That was gibberish to me because again, I was still new to all this stuff. So I didn't know what the hell that meant. And essentially, if you don't know, there's, different types of SD cards, and different types of SD cards have different writing speeds and different capabilities. And if you have just a crappy run-of-the-mill Class 1 SD card, it's not going to work. It worked for the shooting for a while, but eventually it stopped working because it just it couldn't write the information fast enough because it's a high-end camera. You're taking in a lot of graphic imagery, and it wasn't going to fly. So by the time we get done with this shooting day, where I don't even think we got half done what we planned, it was pretty much obvious to everybody that I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And that night, I got a message from the lead actress, who had, of course, been there and seen this. And she was like, oh, hey, sorry, but I had a new project come up, so I'm not gonna be able to be in your thing now. And I knew she was bailing because she saw the red flags that this project was gonna be a train wreck. And it would have been if I didn't decide in that moment, dude, what are you doing? This is not even close to happening. So, I had to embarrass the hell out of myself on this one shooting day just to get, a little bit of clearance in my mind, oh my God, what have you been doing? What are you thinking? And this is stressful because I'm in now. I have 9 weeks to shoot and do a whole film. We're now a week into the term. I've already used up some of my camera borrowing time, and I have no film. I have to go back to the drawing board. It's not just that I have to recast something. I have to come up with a new script a new film, a new everything. I have nothing. And I took an idea that I kind of had started sort of writing that wasn't that great, but I expanded on it and kind of came up with this really kind of deep, dark film. It was about a woman who was like a repeat sexual assault victim, and she works a job where she like delivers things for her friend's business. One of those jobs that probably requires a lot of time, but you don't get paid very well for. And her car ends up breaking down in the midst of delivering something, and she's like kind of getting on the fringe of being out of town and kind of out in the sticks, and her car breaks down, and all of a sudden she's stranded out in the middle of nowhere. And the guy who ends up showing up to help her out is like the first guy that ever attacked her, like years and years earlier. And it's kind of how, they have this experience together, and they suddenly realize who the other one is, and it goes from there. My greatest criticism of it is pacing. The pacing is just like trying to slosh through quicksand. But again, it was an early project. You're bound to make mistakes. But I just threw this script together, managed to bum the camera for as long as I could. I remember, and like, again, you had limited usage. So, and my lead actor in the film, who was the same guy that said, "Oh, I've read a lot of Shakespeare and I really like your writing," he he was only available to us for like a week before he had to leave for a new project. So we were so limited on time between his availability and camera availability. The last half of the film we shot, I had the flu. I remember just being on fire and just forcing myself, "Oh, we're almost done." And because I was so hazy, I did something really stupid, which was we went to this. This was so reckless. Like, looking back, I'm like, why did any of us think that this was an okay thing to do? So, without spoiling too much, an accident ends up happening with the lead character, and the guy has to rush her to the hospital. Well, me being inexperienced and not really thinking ahead, we actually show him driving and going to a real hospital. And we film him. We obviously knew we couldn't go into the hospital and have him be like, "I've got someone who's injured, come help." But I film him stopping the car and leaping out of the car and running towards the hospital to obviously get someone. That was the closest we could get to showing him running to the hospital without him going in. But he would run up to the front door and then turn and come back. And we did like 5 takes of this. And he said after, like the last take, he was like, the people at the front desk in there are starting to look out the front door with some concern. And it's good because we have this guy who keeps running up to the door, panic, and then just kind of stops and casually walks away. And then he comes back like a minute later. I'm surprised nobody came outside or they didn't call security or anything because nobody came and talked to us, which in hindsight, I think we were pretty lucky in that regard. But when I was getting the establishing shot down by the street, I wanted to get like the hospital sign and the shot and then him pulling up and pulling in. I had to set up the camera on its tripod in this big mess of ivy. And so again, I've kind of got the flu and I'm just wiped out. I'm like, okay, I got the shots out. I pull the lens. It's nighttime, by the way. And I just casually pull the lens cap off and toss it on the ground or toss it into the ivy. And just I'm not paying attention. And we get done with the film and I'm like, all right, lens cap on the camera. Where the hell is the lens cap? And all of a sudden I realize, oh my God, I just like took the lens cap off and just tossed it into the bushes. And it's dark. It's 2012 and I'm a poor person, which means I did not have a cell phone with a flashlight at that time. I think one of them did, but it wasn't a very high-end flashlight because again, it's 2012. And we spent like, and again, it's cold because it's like freaking early November at this point, and I have the flu, and I'm searching around in the freaking cold trying to find a lens cap that we never did find. And it was drama because again, I understand it's, the college's equipment, and they made such a big deal out of freaking getting a replacement lens cap. And he literally was like, the teacher guy was like, you're not gonna get a grade on your project, which, was this project I've been busting my ass on the whole term, had to start from scratch a week in. So literally I got him a replacement lens cap, no harm, no foul. And I delivered it. The teacher wasn't there that day, so I just gave it to the assistant. She was like, oh, okay, yeah, whatever. Replacement lens cap. All right. I get a call. It's the last day of school. It's the morning. The term is going to be over in a couple of hours. I get a call from my teacher saying, hey, yeah, the lens cap you got isn't the right size. Again, I'm new to film, and I apparently wasn't aware that this lens cap was way too small to fit on the lens of the camera that I'd been using repeatedly and should have had at least a general idea as to its size. So he's still like holding out on whether he's going to grade my assignment. And so I suddenly have no car, no experience buying lens caps. And I call my friend like, dude, I'm in some deep shit right now. I need you to like pick me up and take me to the store so I can find a lens cap. And of course, this time I was smart enough to do my research and find out exactly what, because it's not like it just says on the lens cap, oh, hey, you're this lens cap, you're this brand lens cap. There's a specific number that goes with a specific size, and that usually goes with like the millimeter of the lens, which I was using a zoom lens, so I didn't even, again, being inexperienced, I didn't even know what the millimeter was of it. If somebody hands you a lens and it's like, this is a 72 millimeter lens, well, then you get the lens cap that has the 72 on it, which I don't remember if it was a 72 or a 77 that was the actual size. I mean, I should know. I have a same size lens, same type camera, so I could probably go look at my lens cap right now and find out, but it takes effort. And so we end up having to drive into downtown Portland, and I go to Camera World, which recently was sitting empty for a couple of years, and I think they finally put something else in there. And they had it's Camera World. They had barely any lens caps, and they didn't have the size that I needed. I ended up having to go to like Shutterbug or some random little place that was right around the corner that was obviously smaller and not as popular of a place, but they had a substantially better selection of lens caps. And I literally got a lens cap there like in the final hour before like I would have shown up with a lens cap and the school just would have been shut down. It would have been like, okay, I have nobody to give this lens cap to. We probably would have figured out something to do, but at the time I was like, I don't know. Am I going to be screwed? So, you act like an idiot, you live and you learn. And I ended up, oh my God. It was fun because I made some really good friends who I practically never talk to anymore. And I feel kind of crappy about. We were like, it was great. So we take this film class. And essentially, everybody in the class, we're going to break up into like 4 different groups. And a lot of people that were in the class knew each other, so they all knew what groups to get into. And of course, I got shoved into the group of like, 6, 7 people that didn't know anybody in there. And so when the teacher's like, break into groups, the introverts will understand this. When they say break into groups, and a bunch of people start standing up and, walking around and saying, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. And you're just kind of sitting there like, you want to, introverts will understand that school experience well. I sure as hell do. I hated it. The moment they were like, this is a group project, I'm like, well, let's see how long I can do it by myself before the teacher realizes that I'm not in a group. And so I thought, well, this is going to be, like I didn't know any of these people, and they were the people that were all just kind of sitting around and didn't know what to do. And so I thought, well, this is going to be a crappy thing. Like, it looks like we're going to be the group where nobody knows how to do anything. And we actually were the one group that actually became like really close. Like we actually hung out outside of class after a while. But it took some weeding out. There was one guy in our group that I kind of got strange vibes from. I don't know. And he ended up having to drop the class really quick. So, okay, maybe he wasn't that weird, but I don't know. And there was another Steve. Well, I was Steve, he was Steven. He was I don't know. He was kind of I don't want to say a Jeffrey Dahmer looking guy, but he was kind of a Jeffrey Dahmer looking guy. And so we don't we obviously we just met. We don't really have an idea, and we ended up doing a script that I'd written that had just been kind of sitting around for a while because, well, it wasn't a very good script. And we ended up doing it, and oh god, I have such disdain for that movie now. In part because of what we were put through, and two, just because I don't know. I wrote it like several years earlier, and it didn't age well. At least with where my mind was going, it didn't age well, and it didn't age well. But this other, so we're kind of bringing ideas to the table, and I mentioned this, and we're kind of like, oh yeah, that's interesting, and ultimately we ended up, I think, going that way because it was the easiest thing to do. We didn't need special effects. We didn't need a bunch of. It all took place in one house. We didn't have to have a bunch of set locations. We actually no, we actually did. We actually had to do one exterior. We went to this secluded bridge over like a creek out in the middle of this park in the middle of nowhere. There was homeless people everywhere. It was a little unnerving, but it was quick and we got it done. But for the simplicity, I think is the reason why we ultimately went with that. But this, it took us, a class period or two to ultimately come to that decision. And this Steven guy, he wanted us to do some big, elaborate Star Warsian type thing, which obviously was never going to happen. One, I didn't want to do something like that because of reason two. We weren't going to be able to do it, at least without it being shitty. It was going to look like some corny, crappy YouTube fan made horse shit. Like it wasn't going to happen. And so, we tried to be as nice as we could about it. Like, just logistically with the time and the resources, like, it's just not feasible. And he didn't I don't know if he just doesn't know how film happens or what it takes to do special effects, especially when you have no money and no options in that field. So it was just very awkward. And I remember us, we decided on my film. And so it was understood what it was about. It was the run of the mill guy went to a party, wakes up, wiped out the next day. All of a sudden, a woman comes out of his bedroom he's never met before. He's got a girlfriend. So did he cheat on his girlfriend and have sex with this girl or didn't he? It wasn't the most, creative film idea in the world. But it was understood that that was the general outline of the film. And I swear to God, when we decided on this and made it clear to this Steven guy, what the storyline was like, his response was, yeah, no, this can be okay, as long as we put some action scenes in there. And the guy who I ended up doing a lot of the work, but the guy who was kind of like the organizer of the group was this guy, Talis, who I actually still see from time to time because he lives really close to my theater, and I'll see him pop in to see. I mean, not recently, obviously, but he's been known to pop in and see movies from time to time. And he was the guy that was explaining it, like, this is the movie we're going to do. And so the guy says that, like, go and put some action scenes in there. And Talis is just like, no, it's not that kind of a movie. And it was just this guy was just constantly making the situation awkward, and it was just obvious that it was like he didn't know non-sci-fi movies exist. And we get, obviously we have to cast, we have to, get a location established. So we're about 2 weeks in, something like that, before we get ready to start filming. We show up. Courtney, a girl in our group, we were able to film at her house. We get there. Laura, my friend, this is the first thing I ever did with her. So she was the lead actress, the girl that the guy maybe did or didn't sleep with. And and we're trying to look professional. At least I'm trying to. And they're there. We're getting our equipment ready. they're looking over the lines, they're running lines together, and suddenly, and I don't remember through who we got this from, because none of us were close to this Steven guy. We're literally, it's less than an hour away from beginning to film. And we get a call. Steven's not going to make it because he's in jail. The guy was in jail. Apparently, he was living with his mom, and he said something, or his mom said something that pissed him off, and he like punched his mom, and she had him arrested. That's about all I really could take away, and I'm not even sure how accurate that account is, but whatever the case, this Steven guy assaulted his mom to some degree, and he wasn't going to be there to film. I mean, at that point, we knew he wasn't going to be there ever again. And that was how we lost that creepy Steven guy. He hit it again right before we were about to start shooting. And we get that little, and that was just such a perfect representation for how that project went. I ended up doing cinematography literally because nobody else there had like any, literally any like real camera experience. And mine was not, extreme, but I had a lot more experience. I had a lot more editing and a lot more camera experience than anyone else. And so I ended up being the cinematographer and pretty much editing the whole thing. And it wasn't because I was being possessive of the project. I really didn't like it that much. But it was just, and like I tried giving other people in the group pieces to edit just to appease our teacher to make him think we were all kind of sharing the editing. And it was just obvious. They hadn't had enough experience yet. And so their editing was poor and choppy. And, the usual mistakes you make when you're first learning how to edit. It wasn't that they were bad. It was just they weren't experienced enough yet. And I put enough time into this film where I was like, I don't want this to suck ass. And they kind of understood that. Like it was understood that the stuff they were editing on their computers, that was a ruse to keep the teacher happy while I was doing the main editing. But I just never got comfortable. I still just wasn't quite super comfortable with the higher end camera yet. And so the cinematography was The most stressful thing is we had another guy in our group. I don't remember his name, but he was a hardcore stoner. And we relied on this guy to do our audio. And literally, he would be directly in between our two acting talents. And instead of just holding the mic over both of them to get both of their audio, he was holding the pole like this so the mic was like this. And he was doing this back and forth between the characters. So when this character would start talking, he'd be just in the process of turning the mic. So about 2/3 of the audio we had was unusable because every time you'd hear a character start to speak, if a character had a line that was like, "What are you doing in my house?" It would be like, "What are you doing in my house?" Like all the audio was screwed because the mic would be facing the wrong direction at the start of everyone speaking. And so since I was taking on pretty much the whole project in general, I ended up having to ADR the whole thing. ADR is just a fancy word for saying I had to do a bunch of voiceovers. I spent about 3 hours with Laura. I spent 3 hours with our lead actor and about an hour and a half with the girlfriend who shows up at the end of the film. I spent almost 10 hours doing voiceovers because this guy screwed our audio up so royally. And, once I did voiceovers with one character, suddenly their audio was so much better than everyone else's. So, even if there wasn't really a super issue with the mic not facing the right direction, like once I ADR'd one character, I had to ADR all of them. So that was exhausting for me and for the talent. And the peak was we had to turn in the project on a DVD. It had to be on a DVD. That was a requirement. There was no way around it. You couldn't be a flash drive, couldn't be an SD card, couldn't be a VHS. Why that would happen, I don't know, in 2013. And I'd had my Mac for about, I mean, not that long. I'd had my Mac for about 6 months, and I hadn't had to burn a DVD on it yet. And all of a sudden, I realized I don't have DVD burning software, and I can't go out and buy it. Buy a hard copy. I don't have time. This was the day I realized this issue at about 11 o'clock noon, the day of the film festival we were going to have for these films, at which time by 6 p.m., right before the festival started, you had to have a solid DVD copy in the teacher's hand, or like you were in trouble. That was heavy. That weighed heavily on our grades, was having that hard DVD copy of the film. That was what got played. And I remember that another group showed up and they didn't have a copy burned. And they were like, I didn't know we had to burn a DVD. And it was like, Jesus, the teacher said it like 400 times. But there's always that one group. And I think they actually missed the first half. I mean, they salvaged their grade because they missed, I think, the first half of the festival because one of them they had to like run off and go, get whatever computer they had the film on and burn a copy onto a DVD and bring it back. And they just like barely got their film in time. And their film actually wasn't too bad, but like it ended in the middle. Like right as things were developing, the film just ended. It was bizarre. But I couldn't find a reliable, which this is still the case today on the App Store. You cannot find reliable DVD burning software. And so the number of things I tried to do to get a burned copy, I literally burned a copy of the movie and moved it onto my old PC. It wasn't even a Mac. I burned the film as a movie file or an MOV. Sorry, that's what I meant. I just instinctively think MOV, movie file. And I put it onto my computer, and I had that old school, like, Microsoft DVD burner software, whatever came with a new PC computer in like 2008. And it just wouldn't do it. It kept locking up. It was like the file was too progressive. And I tried like so many different things, and it gets to be about 4 o'clock, and I'm screwed. I've run out of ideas in my personal dynamic. Like, we're screwed. After all the work we put into this, we're screwed because we're not going to have a DVD in time. So I go onto Facebook and vent my frustration. Like, our group's going to be screwed because, it's my fault. I didn't think about this stuff. Sorry, just my legs are cramping up, so I'm adjusting a little bit. So I'm just like, we're screwed and it's my fault. Even though I've been putting a lot of work into this thing. And my friend sees this and is like, so wait, what's the problem? I'm like, I can't get a DVD copy to burn on, and we have to have a DVD for the he was going to go to this thing tonight. And so he was like, well, dude, I have a DVD burner on my Mac. And so I'm like, come get me now. So he came and picked me up. We drove back to his place, and I put a DVD. Saved the video file onto his computer, and then I was able to burn a DVD copy. It was literally like 5:15 p.m. Like, I had to burn a copy onto DVD, test it real quick to make sure it was working, and then it was like, boom, we had to be out the door. So we got it done, but the stress never ended. There was always a problem. One of those being that a guy in our group got freaking arrested for punching his mother. Like, go figure. It was just, that was such a great metaphor for how the project was going to be. And probably the stress of it is one of the reasons I really don't like it. I also don't like it because it's a shit movie. And I can say that because I did the cinematography, the editing, and I wrote the thing. So it's not like I'm knocking somebody else's work. Which, by the way, if you want to watch it, it's on my other YouTube channel, Silly Sister Pictures. It's called The Morning After. So if you want to watch it and see how crappy it is, go for it. It's there. I don't know why I don't just delete that crap. But I haven't. But again, you learn stuff. You learn how you got to keep going. If something's not working out right, you got to keep going till you get it figured out. I've had to do that many more times since then, in my film career, and one of the things I can at least appreciate about the morning after, for all of its stress, is it made it boosted my confidence because I was so disappointed with how that thing ultimately turned out. And also, especially if you're a film aficionado, it is very abundant that the whole film is ADR'd. First of all, the dialogue is never going to perfectly match with the characters, but I also there's barely any background noise, and since we recorded these voiceovers in like a silent room, the film, when characters aren't talking, is very quiet. It's too quiet for people like in a house in a residential neighborhood. You don't hear like cars going by. You don't hear clocks ticking. You don't hear dogs barking outside or anything like that. It just it's just not good. But like it pissed me off how mediocre it was cuz like I knew I could be better than that. And literally, while I was finishing this, I did a side project, which is also up on my Silly Sister Pictures channel if you want to compare stuff, because I was doing this at the same time. I did a little, it was for a project for a actual like film history course. And we got to finish it by doing some kind of project and related to something. And we'd watched, a bunch of silent films at the start. So I shot a silent film called The Starlet. Actually, it was actually reshooting something that I had done a couple years before when I was just doing for fun a string of like silent film stuff. And it was great because I met Carrie, my friend, who was the lead in Runaway Highway. I met her through that little, what was essentially a school project. That was how I met her. She answered my ad and she played the Starlet, the lead character in it. And I ended up hiring a guy, Josh, who I ended up kind of becoming friends with, and he ended up being in other projects I did, and I helped him. I was like a DP on a project he did, and like, and they actually not anymore. Um, they actually dated while I was doing Runaway Highway, and they met for the first time doing the Starlet film, and so it was perfect because there was a pseudo romantic interest in Runaway Highway, and we just brought him on to play that because they were. And I actually, when I brought him on, I don't even know if I knew that they were dating at the time. And then I was walking down, I think like Holgate. It's Holgate or Belmont, one of those, the kind of like semi hipster stretches. And there they were just walking along together. I was helping another friend on another film project, and I'm sitting there filming something. I stand up and I think Josh said some snarky comment, and I was like, "Who the f are you?" Hey, and they were walking around together, and I'm like, "Interesting. What are they doing walking around together?" Well, they were dating. And again, I filmed that mostly in the summer of 2015, and it didn't get done till we didn't do the premiere of it till I think April of 2017. So it had been almost 2 years since we. And one of the things that I was worried about, and of course, inevitably they did separate. I mean, because I think they were still together, but I was worried because they play people who are like interested in each other in the film, and I was like, this is going to be a very awkward premiere if they're like broken up now. And then they both show up to the premiere and they're being romantic in the film, and it's just like, oh, well, this is troublesome. But no, it went well. It was a very small showing, but there was, you know, everybody loved it. It got a hoot. I was surprised at the reception. I didn't really get what it was because it was a film that I primarily did because I got really sick and I couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And then I finally went and saw a doctor because my heart was racing when I'd stand up. I was um, having all kinds of stomach discomfort. I started getting really bad arm pain, like arm fatigue. And what I found out, and of course it made perfect sense after I actually like looked at the side effects and realized what was going on, or what was happening. Of course, a guy living in Oregon. What happened was my vitamin D levels were tanking. Like the optimal level of vitamin D in your system, I had about a third of that. And literally my body was breaking down on me. So I had to start taking these vitamin D freaking horse pills every week. 50,000 units once a week per pill. Literally, they were like that big. Horse pills. But the thing is, I was feeling like crap for several weeks before that. And then, of course, you go to the hospital, you have to wait several days before they get in touch with you. Then you go and get your supplements, but it takes supplements like 4 to 6 weeks sometimes to kick in. So I pretty much, it was like 3 months that I was just, I managed to get through work. But other than that, it was like I was just home in bed feeling wiped out. And so it felt so amazing to just feel normal again once, I got those vitamin D levels up. And of course, I've been making movies like a lunatic. And suddenly, here I was. I hadn't done anything for several months because I was feeling sick all the time. And that was where Runaway Highway came out of. It came out of, I admit, the inspiration. I never want to give Reese Witherspoon credit for anything. But the movie Wild was playing at our theater. I want to say like end of 2014. And it's this film where she like walks the Pacific Crest Trail, and like she's had this kind of rough life, or rough recent life, and she's kind of doing this long Pacific Coast Crest Trail walk to kind of like soothe herself of her issues into kind of moving. And I don't know, I barely watched any of it, but I knew the general idea, and I liked that idea of a character who's got issues in her past that have to be dealt with, and she deals with them by having to go on some long excursion. So I already knew kind of general what where this thing was kind of going. um but I had to figure out, like, why is she doing what she's doing. And that ultimately led to me developing this concept that her sister has recently died, and in a very sad, tragic way. And they grew up in this family of people who didn't really care. So it was kind of her and her sister against the world. And now her sister's dead, and they're going to have a big memorial for her. And she decides to steal her ashes to have a memorial alone with her sister, because nobody else cared about her sister when her sister was struggling except her. And her attitude is, these people don't deserve a memorial with her in death because they didn't care enough about her when she was alive. Um, so I had what I wanted with the, like, going on this long excursion with a purpose, and I had established that purpose. So while I got some motivation from the concept of that Wild movie, it wasn't like, oh, I just did a Wild knockoff, because the movies are completely not even along the same lines. So there was that inspiration, but also for me personally, I, hadn't done anything suddenly for months. And I don't even remember really writing much of it. I remember writing this big bit that I managed to get this local actor named Patrick Green, who he's like the high end of local actors. He's like been internationally recognized. Like, he is the shit in Portland. And I remember writing his dialogue. That's the only part of the script I remember writing. Is I remember I already had a scene written, and then I altered his dialogue while I was hanging out with my friend. Shit. I was hanging out with my friend, whose brother-in-law just happened to be Channing Frye, who's a former NBA player. I think he has his own like podcast now. Yeah, he's or not brother. Was that it? Brother-in-law? Yeah, like half brother-in-law, and he owns this like little farmhouse down in Wilsonville, just south of Portland. And we would go and hang out there sometimes, because my friend would sometimes have the responsibility of like going out and checking on the house, making sure, because Channing wasn't. He played for the Blazers, and that's where he met my friend's sister. And so yeah, we would hang out there from time to time when he'd go out there to check on the house, and he and so yeah, we were hanging out at Channing. Did I say Channing Tatum? I meant Channing Frye, obviously. So yeah, the one part of the script I remember writing was this piece for this like really prominent local actor, and I wrote it sitting in a massage chair at Channing Frye's farmhouse. You can't make that up. I even met Channing Frye once. He came out and visited the house briefly, and he's really chill. Just from the experience, because there's people how they act in public, but you never know if that's how they really are. Behind closed doors or whatever. But no, Channing Frye. The one time I met him, he was really chill. He came out, he hit some golf balls into his big farm field. But yeah, I just love that. That's my only script writing memory on Runaway Highway is re-altering this dialogue sitting in Channing Frye's farmhouse one time, and the actor that I was writing that dialogue for, who's like one of the most prominent actors in Portland. I remember the first time I met him. The first time I met him was for another project that I unfortunately didn't get to work with him on. And here he is. He's this kind of up and coming actor. And, he's probably going to just get bigger as time goes on. It won't surprise me if he starts becoming more of a known name. He's already like I say he's probably like a C-lister now because he's great. He's amazing, but he isn't, in the big Hollywood productions yet. But he got nominated for a local film he did at an international film festival. He got nominated for best performance, and like when I say best performance, I mean like he was running against like Bradley Cooper for A Star Is Born was running against him in that category. So this was no joke. He literally got international recognition for a local independent film he was in. So when I say this guy's a big deal, it's kind of a big deal. And the first time I ever met this guy, I was at Starbucks. I was going to talk to him about being in this other film that I did. And we meet, we're talking. He seems kind of chill. He's a little bit of an Adrian Brody looking guy. And we're sitting there for a while. I've bought my drink. I don't know, he might have bought a drink. I don't know. And as we're sitting there, chit-chatting, I'm getting very expressive with my arms, apparently. And at one point, I was like, blah, 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 blah. And I went like that. And as I brought my hand back, I knocked my coffee drink into my lap, soaked my crotch, down my legs. The seat was soaking wet. So I had to be like, oh, I'll be right back. I need to go to the restroom. And I had to run off to the restroom and literally clean myself the best I could. Even in doing that, my arms were sticky. My crotch smelled like white chocolate mocha. And I came back and I wiped down the seat the best I could. There was still coffee all over the floor. Like it was almost a full venti, And but I'll tell you what. And I was all itchy because it's sticky coffee. I sat down in that sticky chair smelling nasty, and I'll tell you what, I finished that damn meeting. But yeah, one of the reasons I mean, aside from the fact that I actually got him to be a character in a film of mine, one of the reasons I want him, his name's Patrick Green, by the way. One of the reasons I want him to hit it really big, again, aside from the fact that he's been in one of my films and the fact that he's like an amazing actor, is if he reaches like high-end Hollywood success, I will always have that story to tell people about the first time I met that famous actor and I spilled coffee all over my crotch. True story. Really happened. That's just that was the thing was it was this film I did called Our Worlds Collide, which that was the film that I hired that Tim guy for, that I needed the audio for, and he was like, sorry, my kidneys are dying, so sorry I didn't get your audio at your most precious convenience. We actually had to do the last day of shooting without him because of that. We ended up having to bring in another guy to just kind of help do the last little bits we had to get done. But, you do what you got to get your film done. That's one of the things you got to learn. That's why they tell you, when you first start, it's okay to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. and you're going to have to deal with crap, and you're going to have to make do with certain things when you're first starting. It's all a matter of like how do you push through and get that stuff done. You got to do it. And this thing, because it was a film, I was going to do it in the fall of 2013. No, fall of 2013. I just finished another film and was editing it, but I wasn't shooting another film, so I decided to start a new one. And so I was going to do that, and everybody I talked to ended up not being in the film. The first woman I met, I can't remember her name, but I know that she was a recurring person in Portlandia. She popped up in several Portlandia episodes. Every time she popped up, I'd be like, "Oh, what's up?" And she actually recommended Patrick Green to me and the other actress that I talked to for the other character, and it just ended up not happening. Well, I think Patrick Green ultimately wasn't available. The girl that was in Portlandia wasn't available, and all of a sudden it was like, okay, I want to try something else. And I actually almost did a web series after that, but it just didn't. I like the idea. I like where it was going. I like that it had that kind of crazy, kooky way. And this was, 20. This web. I don't. Web series aren't. They were kind of a fad on YouTube because this again, this was like 2013 going into 2014. Web series, not that they're all gone now, but they were a big deal at that time, and so I kind of wanted to get in on that a little bit. And I came up with a decent idea, but it just kind of ran out of steam. It was kind of something that was good for a few episodes, and then it just kind of, I don't know, just kind of died, and so I ended up not doing that. And then I came up with another big film idea that I literally killed myself. I almost killed myself. Because I wanted to make this the big film that you make. So I wanted to bring on a lot more crew than I needed. I put a lot more exhaustion into it than I needed to. And I just, literally, I spent about 2.5 months just killing myself. And even by then, we got to a point where we were about 5, 6 days before we were supposed to begin. And I still barely had any crew because I had a few people come on that suddenly weren't available anymore. My lead actor wasn't available, or no, he wasn't not available, but he all of a sudden was starting to like change how he felt about and you know, I wanted another camera guy. I didn't even really have that yet, and I finally met with a guy that was willing to do my camera stuff, and then I had this. All of a sudden, my lead actor was suddenly changing around on me, and I realized we need to start shooting in a couple of days. There's nothing but turmoil with this thing. I was literally starting to feel sick. I was so exhausted from just going so hard into this, and it was totally unnecessary. And in the end, I suddenly realized this isn't happening. This is not worth killing yourself over. And so I ended up saying, sorry, everybody, this just isn't happening right now. And I got to tell you, it was a great decision. I needed to stop. I really needed to. It was killing me. But of course, once I stopped that project, all of a sudden, oh, I have time to do a new film now, and that's when I brought back the Our Worlds Collide. And so in the summer of 2014, I ended up filming that, and that was actually a very, excuse me, like crack my neck. That couldn't have been great for you, but it was a very rewarding experience because it was the first time that I really felt like a film director. Um, I don't know what it was, and it was also it was one of the last times, at least to this point, that I filmed the whole entire film was handheld. I don't think there was one single shot that was tripoded. It was all me doing handheld camera work, which does a number on your arms after a while. Yeah, no joke. And then I kind of started moving more into more. Well, actually, I did another film that I think was mostly handheld. That When Living Without movie I was talking about quite a while ago. But now, for the most part, I try to keep it stable. Tripoded shots, shots that are steady. Handheld shots when they're necessary. And obviously, if the subject matter and the mood of a film comes along, I may go out, like even this new one that I was talking about that has, it's kind of a serial killer element. Something like that is, you know, good for like kind of shaky, unstable handheld work. And I'm vacillating right now on whether I want to do it mostly handheld or mostly, steady and tripoded. I kind of wanted to have a kind of sleek, dark, moody feel, which makes me want to. I'm kind of like leaning like 65% keep it steady and like 35% um, make it handheld and crazy. Um, if I'm going to put a lot of time into a film project, that's one of the things that sucks is like, a big Hollywood person, like whoever Paul Greengrass gets to do his cinematography, that guy can do, if you don't know who Paul Greengrass is, he's done most of the Bourne films. He did United 93, he did Captain Phillips. His films have this very mobile camera look that kind of is trying to put you there with them. But someone could do a look like that who's doing a big Hollywood production, and people are like, oh, nice artistic choice. But if you're an unknown, you can do handheld camera work, and people look at you and think you're just um, you're not a, what's the word I'm looking for? You're not a disciplined filmmaker. You're just kind of wobbling around with the camera. So, it's a lot harder when you're unknown and you don't have the clout or the reputation for people to not look at you, even if you're doing it for the same reason that a big budget movie's doing it. A lot of people will look at it your way and think you're just being lazy, even if it's, an artistic choice. And and that's certainly not why I've stopped doing that as much. I want them to look. I want my if I'm going to put a lot of time into my projects again, unless handheld is called for. I want to, I want them to look. I want my films to look a lot more polished. Um, that's why I've kind of gone that way over the years. And, I used to have to do tripod all the time because a lot of times I didn't have any crew and I would be acting in my own stuff. If we go way, way, way back far enough, I would act in my own stuff. So I didn't have a cameraman. So everything gets tripod and you just hope you're setting up the shot right. You get from there and now you get to where I am today, where now I don't have to be in front of the camera and I have, at least a little bit of a crew. And, you do the work. A lot of times, it really does depend on the subject matter, and it really depends on who you're working with in terms of how much you enjoy a given filmmaking experience. Like my last filmmaking experience wasn't bad, but it wasn't fantastic. And obviously I was a little bit rusty, and I felt like there was some communication issues from time to time. So there was things. Um, but one of the Runaway Highway was such a stress to get done. It was something that we started at the end of May and the objective was to have it done by the start of July, and we didn't get it done till the end of November because of the constant cancellations being made and just all this stuff. And I remember just going to work and just being angry because we couldn't freaking, and I knew what we had gotten was good so far, and I kept. And when you work at that level of film work, you always wonder, when is somebody going to bail? Oh, I got a paying gig, so now I can't be in your movie anymore. And then all this work you put in is for naught. And I wasn't really worried about that because Carrie was a consummate professional, and I knew she wasn't going to just bail. And she reassured me, like, however long it takes, it sucks that it's taking forever, but we're getting this done. But for all of that drama, all of that stress, everyone who was in that film, and there was about 12 different characters, and like 6 of the people I'd never worked with before, so you never know how that's going to turn out. Everyone was perfect. Everyone did a great job. It was not stressful when we were actually filming. When we were actually filming, it was fun. And sometimes it's just not fun. And obviously, you're doing work. It's not about having a great time every time, but usually if you feel good about what you're doing and everyone around you feels good about what you're doing, you're probably doing something pretty good. That's kind of how I see it, kind of correlating. Um, Some films that's been the case, some not. More yes than no. Obviously, as I mentioned with that one girl I had to work with, you sometimes have horrible experiences. Um, and it teaches you more. It teaches you more about how to conduct yourself, how to do things, how to go. The casting process is so important because you'll have a lot of people that you've never met before. Um, so I don't do it as much as I used to because I don't have as much time as I used to, but I used to go and meet up with every person I auditioned individually. And now I just ask them to do video auditions and I try to get as much as I can from that because I don't have the time anymore to go and meet everybody who's interested in again. A couple years back, I'd only have 3 or 4 people in a film. Now my films have, 10, 12 people in them. So it's more people to see. And I just can't, spend that much time like I used to. So you got to do your best to just kind of, and of course, there's other things you rely on, like, word of mouth, someone you worked with before. I remember one project I was going to do that I gave up. The lead guy that was going to be in it, I was in talks with a guy about doing some. He was going to be like my audio engineer. Like after the audio was done, he was going to fix it up to make the audio better, which I've never had that for one of my films. And obviously, as I move up, I hope that things like that become more of a possibility. And he was like, "Oh, who's in your film?" Because he'd worked on some stuff. He says, "Maybe I know some of your people." And I told him who my lead was, and I saw his eyes waver. And I was like, "You guys don't get along?" And he was like, "Yeah, I know him. No, we don't get it." Which was weird because the guy that I had as my lead was a pretty cool, chill, fun-loving guy. But then again, maybe this sound guy just wasn't about having any fun at all. I don't know. And so, the project never happened, but I was like, "Ugh, well, that sounds like some drama waiting to happen." But I just went with it. I was like, "Well, we'll still see. We'll see how it goes. And hopefully it goes okay." And of course, it didn't happen at all. But well, I used to be a lot more afraid of being like, you don't like. I'm big on having a communal environment. I want everybody to be happy. I want everybody to feel their voices are heard. I want everybody to feel, they're being appreciated for what they're doing. And I want us obviously to all get along, so there's not drama, affecting the, production. But in the past, also with my kind of, sorry, I'm getting that itchy nose thing from my indoor allergies. Um, but one of the aspects of that is, along with my, introversion, I used to be way too scared to own my productions. And that led me to making dumb decisions like, oh, here's a sound guy that doesn't get along with the guy who's going to be my lead. Well, whatever, that won't be a problem at all. And just assuming nothing would happen. It was like, no, something could happen. Like, hopefully it doesn't. Hopefully these people are professional, but sometimes you just don't know. And so now I'm a lot better at kind of owning my productions and saying, like, I need it this way. Like, pretty much anytime someone gives me a suggestion, I will take it. I will hear it out. And sometimes the only reason I'll ever say no to a suggestion is if it just doesn't fit. It doesn't make sense in the overall construct of the film. But usually, if somebody gives me a good idea, even if I don't absolutely love it, I'll say, "Hey, okay, we'll try it the way it is on the script. We'll try it your way." And 50% of the time, I find that I like the suggestion that was given to me more than what was originally on the script. It's another reason why I listen is because sometimes their ideas are better than mine. You have to. Every time I've worked with somebody who has worked with a director that they don't like, it's somebody who is just overly obsessive. Like my friend Carmen told me about one time. She was working on a film and they took an hour to get one shot of a guy's hand picking up a drink at like a bar. Like an hour. They did like 60 takes of a guy reaching down, picking up a glass at a bar. So those kind of directors drive people crazy, especially at the independent level. If you're paying me, $1,000 a day, fine, I'll deal with this crap. But if you're making practically nothing, like, what am I doing here? But then there's also the directors that just are asshole, and I know what it's like. I know what it's like to want to be uber possessive of your story, especially if you're writing and directing it and you're shooting it. It's like, this is my little baby. I created this and you're great actors, which means you can come in and do what I can't do, which is act in the film that I'm doing. But also, it's like, you know, you want to keep the actors from changing your story because you're obsessed with being in control and you're obsessed with, like, this is my movie, and therefore don't you come and mess it up by wanting to change this little thing or that little thing. And as a film director, you have got to let that kind of shit go. Like, you have to let it go because people aren't going to want to work with you if you're just an egomaniacal asshole who gets offended when someone makes a suggestion to you. Again, pretty much every suggestion I've ever been given by someone for a film that went, opposite of whatever I was thinking as a director or whatever was written in the script ended up being better than what was on the script. And you actor see, filmmakers think that, like, actors are like, sometimes filmmakers think that actors are just too, like, one dimensional, like they're just here to act, they're just here to be the character and that's it. And it's like, well, maybe if you have sucky actors, but if you have actors that are invested, like, they want this to be good, they're putting their time into it, they don't want this to suck because it's a waste of their time and it reflects negatively on them. Hey, dudes, go to the such and such theater and check out this shitty local independent film I was just in. It's horrible. It's probably going to ruin my career and make nobody ever want to work with me. Go watch it. That's, so case in point, this film that I did, first film I did, the film about the girl that has had, she's been a repeat sexual assault victim and ends up stuck with this guy that attacked her years before. The actress I had for that, um, you know, she's delivers stuff, so she needed a car to drive in. So we could have just easily used her car. There we go. You have a car, great. We'll use your car. But she contacted me and was like, because her character's supposed to be kind of poor and kind of struggling to get by and kind of a shut in. And my actress had this, like, it was only like a year old. It was like this really kind of flashy SUV. And she was literally like, I don't think my character would be driving a car like this, which I agreed with. And mostly it was like I was new to film and we didn't really have many other options. So it was just like, well, we have to use your car. But she was like, no, I'll put out some feelers and, like, figure this out. And she just happened to have a friend who had kind of an older Honda, like a early 2000s Honda I think she said had been sideswiped by a semi, and so, like, a big chunk of the bumper cover was missing. And so she borrowed that car for the shoot, and I made sure to get a really firmly established shot of that bumper cover missing. And it had a recently replaced fan belt, so when you turned it on, it went. And all of a sudden, that one little change made her so much more that struggling, broke, lost character. Just having that slightly more shitty looking car. And that was her idea. She didn't have to come up with that. We could have just done whatever. But that was her idea. And it worked perfectly. It completely changed the whole dynamic of the film. It completely changed the whole dynamic of her character because she was invested. She didn't just show up to just read off of a script and, hey, hopefully it goes okay. She showed up to be a part of the film as a whole. She was the lead character. She was invested. That's what I want as a film director. And if you have a constant stranglehold on every single little nuance of your film, unless it absolutely has to be done that way, then people aren't going to want to work with you. They're just not. Because, well, you're too much of a pain in the ass. That being said, I need to take my eye drops. Sorry. Whew. My mouth is getting numb. Just pausing to put those drops in, that was like the longest I've had my mouth shut in, like, geez, I've been live streaming for almost 2 hours. I'm astonished nobody's come downstairs in this time. I've been completely not completely by myself. I've had a visitor, Becker, who, for the record, cut the bejesus. I don't know if, she cut my finger today. She has a tendency to nuzzle against you and then just hack at you. And She doesn't have paws. She has like arms. Like her arms, legs are about as big as mine. She's frightening when you piss her off. But yeah, I mean, if you and it makes filmmaking more fun when you have you have a dynamic that you can appreciate and that everyone else around you is going to appreciate. I've had pretty much every film I've done has been really low budget. Some of them I've had no money to pay my actors, and yet I have not had one actor ever have a bad thing to say about me. And lots of actors who worked for free on one of my films have wanted to work with me again, even if it meant they weren't going to get paid. And of course, now I don't do that anymore. I actually have money that I budget aside so I can actually pay the people now because I actually have the luxury of doing that. Again, earlier when I was first starting to make films and I couldn't pay people, that was because I flat out didn't have any money. But I was also like, okay, I'm broke and can't pay anybody. But does that mean I'm just going to give up and not become a filmmaker? And there's a lot of acting talent out there that want that experience. And I'm not one of these like people that's like, oh, just come and do it for the experience. Don't worry about the money. But I'm saying that there are people out there that want that experience who maybe have limited experience and know that they're going to struggle to find paying work because they haven't established themselves at all yet. And I totally want to help those people because actors have helped me in that same vein when I was starting out. So I have a method that maybe is a little bit unorthodox, but I mean, in some circumstances, but it's always worked. I've never, aside from that first, project where I tried doing that big feature film for my capstone project and then realized I was out of my damn mind. That's the only time that I've ever actually had people quit on me, which was totally understood. But every other film since then, if anybody couldn't be in the film, it was always um, cordial. It wasn't like, Steve, I don't like the way you do shit. I'm not going to be in your movie. Bye. It was always like, this came up, so I can't be in your film anymore. Oh, I got a paid gig now, and I can't be in your film now, which obviously I understand. If you're an actor and you're trying to make money as an actor, and you have to weigh between the project you really like that you're not getting paid for a project that you maybe don't like as much but you're going to get paid for, you're going to take the one to get paid for because you have to feed yourself and provide yourself shelter. So now if I get 90% of a film done and you suddenly say, "Oh, I can't work on your film anymore ever again because I have a paid gig," that I'm going to get pissed about because it's like, really, we got 90% of the way done and you're just going to throw me and everybody else who's worked on this completely under the bus? Shit thing to do. But it was a good experience, but it was also stressful. Was the last film I did, in addition to being my first film that I'd done in a very long time and being very rusty and having to dust the cobwebs off, was it was a rare experience where everybody in the film were people I'd never worked with before, and I wanted that. Um, but it was, especially as an introverted guy, it was a little rough working on a project for the first time in a while where suddenly you didn't know anybody. And again, we got along just fine. There was no fights, there was no arguments. We all got along perfectly well. But it was a little bit rougher working because it was the first time since probably like 2013 that I did a film where nobody I'd worked with before was in it. In fact, everybody who was in Our Worlds Collide was in Runaway Highway a year later. They all popped up at some point. And so, yeah, so it was a little rough doing a project and working with all new people. And that's one of the reasons why I'm kind of looking forward to this new project that I have coming up whenever coronavirus decides to fuck off. Before it, probably inevitably comes back. But I have this film lined up that I want to do, this kind of suspense thriller type thing with a hint of serial killerishness to it. And I'm really happy that my friend Laura is on board to play the lead. One, because she's perfect for the character, but two, it's going to be really nice to have a lead that is somebody that I've worked with before that I know again. It's just, I need that right now. And I've had a lot of responses to all the other characters in the film. So I think as far as getting the right talent for this film and being able to pay them now, this film's going to be pretty solid, and it's going to be worth it. It's going to be worth the money that I spend, because even though I budget money for films now, I don't just have income inflowing cash flow whenever I need it, so that if I invest a bunch of money into something and then it doesn't happen, it's like, oh well, it's okay because the money's still coming in. No, it's I have such and such amount of money, period, to budget towards a film, and if I blow it, then I'm not going to have that money for the next project I want to do. Um, in a way, coronavirus has helped that because it's delayed making that film happen, and it's allowed me to slip a little more cash into the budget for my film. So, I mean, I guess there's some benefits to coronavirus amidst all of the negatives. Just trying to look on the bright side. I've left home maybe 8 times in the last 6 weeks, so anything that keeps me positive. Oh, oh, but I'm fading, guys. I've been live streaming again for almost 2.5 hours now. Just reliving, not necessarily the experience of making film, but just telling the funny stories off to the side. The stories of having to, my earliest films, filming them inside the rectory home I was living in, all the drama with that, and the drama of being completely inexperienced and making stupid mistakes and having to work with horrible talent as opposed to great talent, and all the fun things you end up having to experience. Writing a scene that a prominent local actor ends up acting out, but I wrote it at a farmhouse owned by an former NBA player. Like, that's stuff that I don't just bring up at random when I meet strangers. Hey, do you know that I've been to Channing Frye's farmhouse out in Wilsonville many times? It's actually been a long time. I miss that place. It was right on the river. You could go down to the dock and swim in the river. Oh, it was everything, and it was just rural enough. I remember when my friend and a couple people left the theater. We had a party out there, and they had a ceremonial burning of their work shirts. But anyway, that's a story for another stuff. Yeah, I'm gonna shut down. My throat is dying because I've been talking for 2.5 hours straight. So anyway, I know some people popped up here and there. I've been seeing the. I'm actually honestly surprised at anybody, because even like big YouTubers that have hundreds of thousands of subscribers, they'll live stream and it's like there's like 200 people watching right now. So as a guy with like what, almost 1,200 subscribers, I'm surprised anybody stumbles onto my live streams while I'm doing them. But they become videos on my channel afterwards, so you can see them later. And I've just recently started doing them, and I enjoy just kind of the free, whatever, chill nature of them. I don't have to sit down and edit this. I can just sit here and chat. So if you're sticking around, thank you so much. Remember to like, share, subscribe, hit up my Patreon. If you're just seeing me for the first time, I have like 550 videos on my channel, some of which aren't worth your time because they really shouldn't be on here, and I need to go through and privatize those one by one. But if you love history, crime, crazy, weird stories. I mean, I'm called Steve the Amateur Historian for a reason, because I like history, and a lot of it is local Portland, Oregon, Pacific Northwest history. Again, if you're new to this channel, I just finished up like almost an hour-long film about a big unsolved murder case that happened in Portland back in 1920 that gets no press today, even though it's unsolved and a crazy story. I'm constantly finding new stuff. I have a series I do called Historic Murders of Portland, where there are these, 15 to 20, maybe 30-minute videos I do where I go to sites where murder cases happen specifically in the city of Portland. And I go to where they happen and tell the story of these murder cases that happened from between like pretty much mostly like the 1870s to about 1940. 1940 is my cutoff mark, even though I am going to expand on the series and add the 1940s to it in an upcoming season. But I've posted like 70 episodes, and I still have like 20 some more that I haven't posted yet that I'm going to be posting gradually. And hopefully this coronavirus thing will die down so I can actually go out and shoot more episodes. But till then, we must wait. And again, thank you so much for watching whatever parts of this you did. And till next time, this has been Steve the Amateur Historian. Catch you later.